Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul Sims speaking to you from eyeforpharma in London. Well done for being here on time, but I can see that quite a lot of people are still signing in, so just hold on, don't go anywhere, and we will start the webinar properly in 1 minute. Okay, so speak to you again in 1 minute.
I haven't registered.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is Paul Sims at eyeforpharma again, and well done for being here on time. This is going to be a very interesting session. As you can see right in front of you, it's called What HCPs Want, Data Science to Enhance Engagement and Customer Loyalty. This has been a popular webinar. We've had over 1,000 people sign up, so it's a topic that we all care about. Personally, I believe that it's a very simple question, but it's one that is evolving and one that we have to ensure that we evolve along with it. The truth is that once upon a time, being successful in working with HCPs was about being charming and being able to talk our way through a great presentation, and that was the way in which we achieved good commercial results. Nowadays, of course, it's defined far more by using data, understanding our doctors and other professionals more better, and of course offering specific, tailored, and often personalized communication types with a heavy emphasis on the value according to what that individual is looking for. So it's certainly true that a customer experience is not a one-size-fits-all initiative. We need to be reliable, we need to be tailored, and of course we need to be trustworthy. These relationships aren't built overnight, and they require consistent management process that supports better practice and better outcomes. So it's going to be a very interesting session, and if you look at your screen right now, you shall hopefully see some happy smiling faces come up. First on the top left, we have Philippe. If you've been to our event in Barcelona, or indeed a couple of other webinars that we've held in the last couple of years, you would have met Philippe before. He's a very good man, always has a lot of value to share. He describes himself as a pharma digital ecosystem architect, which I think is something that is very necessary nowadays. He bridges business and technology to develop and implement integrated digital capabilities that generate true customer insights. So absolutely perfect for this. And thank you so much, Philippe, for joining us today. To Philippe's right, we have Oliver. Oliver is the head of business insights and analytics at Novartis, and he actually leads the development of market insights and analytics team at Novartis UK. He's got lots of experience when it comes to forecasting, trend analysis, research, and patient segmentation analysis, and of course, all of the other various analyses that we need to be expert at nowadays. So again, very well suited to this webinar. Thank you so much, Oliver, for being here. Christian is from Leo, a company which I often describe as not one of the largest, but certainly one of the leading, because it's a company that does tend to put its money where its mouth is and do some fantastic things. Christian is VP of Global Commercial Affairs and Excellence, and he's been at Leo for about 2 years now, where he focuses on disease strategy, digital marketing and engagement, CRM, multi-channel, business intelligence, and insights, analytics, really a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So once again, fantastic to have you. And last but certainly not least is Sven, who comes from Aptus. And just a note to say, Aptus have actually been a partner with us in making sure that today's webinar happens, and they've been an excellent partner, really to work with, and really very much recommended indeed if this is the direction you want to go. So Sven, by the way, was also a winner of an eyeforpharma award earlier this year, so doing some fantastic work where he is. He wants to focus on value through innovation and creative thinking as the pillars of his career, and indeed has done that over the last 25 years, of 15 of which have been in pharma, working across the communications and marketing sphere. So thank you so much, Sven, for being here as well. And actually, I'm going to start by handing over the microphone to Sven, who's going to just quickly set the scene and perhaps enable us to delve into a couple of important trends. So Sven, over to you.
Thanks very much, Paul, for the introduction. Very flattered, and hopefully we'll have some interesting elements to share with the audience so that we can trigger off some great discussions and learnings for us all. Next slide, please. So what I've done is prepared, obviously, according to the scope of this, or the topics that we wanted to cover with the audience today. These are obviously topics that are of interest of everybody today. We hear a lot of things that are, or projects that are going on and things that could be done. What we want to do is open up the panel here to try and find out what really is being done so that people can learn, fail fast and move forward. So please do fire in all of those questions, and between us we'll try and get concrete, realistic, pragmatic answers to you. So the essential topics are: what do actually HCPs want, and what are they actually getting from pharma? The impact of personalization. There's a lot of talk about personalization, how it's being done, and then when it's being done, is it really driving an impact? Is it worth it, really? And then also the data-driven personas. So we can create a lot of information, and then what do we actually do with that? Is it actionable, that will drive value for the pharmaceutical company, and obviously, if possible, for the physician and their patients is the main focus. So if we go on to the next slide then, or right down to, skip that one, that's just the title slide. What we've been doing at Aptus, so just a little word on Aptus. Aptus Health, a division of WebMD. We own the Univardis platform that engages with physicians in multiple countries. So Univardis present in 91 countries, 17 languages, etc. Specifically for the international part, we focus on the European markets, and the people on this call, I think, are most interested in Europe. We run surveys to our doctors because obviously we can reach out to them whenever we want. They're all on our platform every day, every week, every month, etc. And we do run a number of different surveys to collect information to make sure that we can answer some of your questions, and also help us in our own product development to make sure we're at the cutting edge, providing the content, services, functionality that physicians want. So this is the survey from 2019. There were 2,600 physicians that answered our survey. There's a whole bunch of other questions, so please do reach out to us afterwards if you'd like to have a deeper dive and deeper discussions about physicians' expectations and their, in terms of what content format that they want, but also customer experience. So as you can see on this slide, there's a number of different areas. In orange is where they want, what they would prefer from pharma, and then in purple, what they're getting from pharma. So there's some quite big differences. And within our sort of HCP customer experience survey, we do ask about the customer experience, obviously, and one thing that comes out year after year is that whatever we're doing from pharma's perspective, we need to be answering the three pillars for them. Is it trustworthy? Is it relevant for them? And is it really simple for them to use? So there's a lot more information and data behind that, but we need to keep that in mind as well. So on this slide, you can see the big discrepancies about what they want and what they're receiving. Now, panelists, please do chirp in if you have questions on this. Otherwise, I'm actually going to go on to the next slide so that we can get through the few slides and then have an open discussion. Any questions on this slide so far from anybody? Okay, let's move on then. So one thing is what they want and what they're getting, and then we need to think constantly about the experience. I mean, the subject of this webinar is about building loyalty, so data, insights, loyalty. To build loyalty, there are strong correlations between the customer experience across the journey. So obviously, we'd ask the same physicians a bunch of questions, and here you can see what really they agreed to with what do they want in terms of customer experience. So it's important to have options to be able to access information at a time that's convenient for me. So what does that actually mean? Reps are great. I think, quite honestly, the rep, if you can afford it, is by far the best channel, the highest impact. But there's always that question of the frequency and the access to the information when the physician wants it. So clearly there's a role for digital in here. The next one is it important to get consistent and complementary information through the different interactions with pharma companies? And this is all about the coordination and the physician journey and the different touch points. So I'm sure Philippe will talk a lot about how that's being orchestrated from a marketing perspective, and then Christian and Olivia can talk also about that from the sales perspective. But it's really, really important to coordinate that so that you've got a congruent experience from the physician. Just looking at the top ones again, the value, having the ability to quickly review information in a concise way that with further options to look at details. Paul mentioned earlier that Sven won, but actually it wasn't Sven, it was the whole of the Aptus team. We won the most valuable HCP initiative in Barcelona earlier this year, because there's a lot of thinking about the format, the content, the format, and the time available from physicians. So that piece of work was all around the guidelines, where they were available in 1 minute, 20 minutes, and 1 hour. Thinking specifically about the formats and the mindset that the physician is going to be in that. So these are all elements that need to be thought about as we take the physician through the journey. Along the whole way, we want to obviously be capturing data, and that's the data element of this. Okay, let's go down. Any comments, questions on this slide from the panel?
Sven, this is Paul. Just a quick one. There seems to be a lot of audience interest in this. There's just a question about which countries are involved. There's questions about whether there'll be a publication report available, and also which were the majority of the asked HCPs, specialists or GPs.
So for this, basically it was an EU8 survey. So that's the big five: UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, plus Netherlands, Belgium, and Portugal. The obvious reason from our perspective is when we were running this survey, they were the countries where we could commercialize solutions for our clients. And so it was a no-brainer to choose those countries. Obviously, as we move into being a division of WebMD, we'll be able to reach many more countries, etc., in the mid to long term. So the focus here was EU8. If I look at the specialties, definitely there was a large proportion of primary care. Univardis is a platform that has a unique positioning for primary care, but we do bridge the gap between primary and specialty, and we pride ourselves in that. So there were areas, for example, in diabetes, so we had oncology, cardio, pulmonologists, rheumatologists, neuro, and dermatologists as well. So if there are any further questions, we can do reach out to me. With the contact details are in the slide deck, and we can start a dialogue and see what other cuts of information you need, and we can come along and meet you and talk about these things with great pleasure.
Sven, it's Oliver here. So I've got a question about the fourth statement here. A pharma company's representative should advise me on the different resources available that can support me and how to access them. So this is the first answer that seems to drop away from quite a high level of agreement, with quite a few people saying they don't disagree, but they don't agree. It's in the neither category. They disagree, or they strongly disagree. Do you have any qualitative insights as to an understanding as to why physicians wouldn't want pharma company representatives, directing them towards resources that could potentially be useful?
Oliver, I don't have any I don't have data references for that. I can only talk from experience and a gut feeling. And I think, I'd actually turn this one over to Philippe and yourselves, who are much more closer to your reps than Aptus Health. My feeling is that the physician has an experience with their rep, they have a behavior and interactions, and actually changing that behavior and the way they've been doing business with their reps or the interactions with their reps takes time to change. I was managing sales force before, had my own reps, and it's not always an age thing, it's a mindset thing. I sometimes had some of my oldest reps actually were adopting iPads before other ones. So it's really a question, I think, of changing the behaviors of reps so that doctors can expect something else. If they don't know that they can have a great service and the rep isn't proposing it, it won't be high up on their own radar. That would be my feeling without backup information. Would that resonate with you guys, with the rest of the panel?
Yes, definitely. This is Philippe. One thing that I remember, and this goes back to the days when Univardis was actually one of MSD's internal assets. What we saw MSD as is exactly that, a service that we could provide to a physician, and that would be a door opener for a rep. So in that sense, the journey you need to go on with your sales reps is that if you're giving them different types of digital channels or different types of services that you could actually offer, and the ECME was in the previous slide actually as another one, this is actually something that helps the rep entertain a good relationship with a physician, in the sense, again, that they can provide a service, which is not necessarily just a face-to-face call and can be done outside of that.
From my own point of view, I was just wondering whether this was a hangover from the days of more hard selling and physicians believing that the reps that they were engaged with were pushing them towards their company content, which isn't necessarily, or which hadn't historically necessarily always been the content that the physician wanted to engage with. But now, since we're all trying to move towards more physician-centric content that supplies them with what they need and hopefully to help them execute and improve outcomes for patients, that we're going to potentially see that line move in the future. So that's just the point of view that I was thinking.
Okay, great. I'm sure that the cut would be different for different specialty areas, for sure. I think some therapeutic areas are much more service focused than others. In oncology, I think that the rep really does orchestrate this whole service, whereas in some of the more transactional therapeutic areas, the physician might not be expecting such a thing. They're expecting the rep to come in and repeat the message. Okay, shall we jump down to the next section then, which is around the personalization. So really, again here, if we go down 2 slides to slide 9, Paul. So there's always the questions when we're working with our clients about, well, personalization is great, we should be doing it, it's a no-brainer from a marketing perspective. Can we demonstrate it from an impact and ROI perspective and increase sales, etc.? So we can, to an extent, demonstrate that from lead parameters, click rates, open rates, etc., and lag from impact on sales. In today's world, we know that the number of channels are multiplying out. So actually demonstrating uplift in prescriptions is becoming more of an opaque art these days from the number of studies that we've been running with our clients. There are so many different parameters now that it's actually hard to pin down the attribution to any single channel. Now, the question comes down to, well, what's the return on an investment on a channel? And I can turn it around and say, well, what's the return on investment of a telephone? You need these channels. It's an obvious thing that you need them. I think in today's world, to expect people to not believe in digital is almost criminal. Everybody's connected. Everybody's on their phones, on their screens, etc. We see the volumes of doctors, the number of engagements. So we do need to be there. So the question then comes to what's the upside from the personalization? Because that adds levels of complexity. First of all, in identifying it, the personalization, and then to see what level of personalization you want to do. Is it going to be per clusters? Is it going to be per physician? The one-to-one, I think nobody believes we'll ever get there in pharma, but there are different ways we can do that. Here's a little study that we've been running in some different content, where we've been doing test and control on content in oncology on the Univardis platform. And from this, you can see basically over a number of months, if we can personalize the content, we're getting up to 16% increase in open rates. And you can translate that back into the cost per open, etc., to say, well, actually, it's probably worth the personalization efforts that are going into that. And then through the click rates as well, are getting up to 34%. So these are pretty compelling figures. They look simple, granted, but if you take these through and take them throughout the cost structure, I think it demonstrates that there is a real upside in personalization. Afterwards, I think that the debate we'll get onto when we open up the floor is, well, how much personalization, to what level, how are you going to control that, how many messages are you going to do, does it mean that we need to have 10 different pieces of content that have to go through MLR, etc.? It triggers off a bunch of different questions.
Sven, it's Christian here. Could I ask a question about these data?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at Leo Pharma, when we think about personalization, we think about it in three different levels. One is, let's say, the archetype or the behavioral type that a doctor belongs to, that, you know, does it resonate with me, the way it's being positioned, the message. Then the other part is what kind of content is relevant for a given persona, and also what are the preferred channels. So can you say a little bit more about what type of personalization was done in this study?
So maybe I'll go on to the next slide, Christian, and hopefully that will answer your questions.
Sounds good, thanks.
So here on the slide, it's a very busy slide, and the idea isn't to drill down into any single piece of information here. But effectively, at Aptus Health, leveraging the Univardis platform, we have, I think it's something like 150,000 interactions on the platform every single day. So that gives us a lot of data to play with. We've been building up over the last couple of years, dare I say it, I probably shouldn't say it, machine learning and artificial intelligence, but basically trying to get data to understand the archetypes or the behavior that Christian's just talking about, and try to have that driven by data rather than focus groups of 10 doctors in a room to find out what the personas should be. So we are running programs at the moment where we specifically look over a time period, because we know that over different time periods we might have different launches, there might be new mechanism of actions coming out, etc. So we need to think carefully about the time period that we're looking at. Then we need to look at the data that is obviously on Univardis, and then with our smart people in the background doing some things with algorithms, we try to neutralize it to take out the channels. So what we try to do is figure out the content affinity of physician groups. And that gives us the clusters or personas. And we can see that, you know, different clusters, they might have a preference for different channels, and we'll have further dig downs through that. But we can even find within a cluster that physicians that have a certain behavior or persona, they might still have different choices in chat or platforms or content or formats. As we can see on the bottom right, you can say, well, these physicians who, this happens to be in diabetes for holistic, we've got the holistic carers. Well, actually, you can't say they all want to do sponsored questions. They don't all want to have emails. So you need to think carefully about what is the content affinity and the channel, and how you're going to distribute that in a coherent, congruent fashion, so that the physician is receiving that through the different channels, including the sales rep. So hopefully, Christian, I've answered your question with this slide. But this is, to be honest, this is early days. We've been running these types of programs probably for about 9 months, 12 months now, and we're learning as we're going, so that we're constantly improving our algorithms and then constantly improving with our clients. Well, what do you do with that? Because the big question comes out afterwards is, we have so much information now, do we want to be targeting physicians uniquely or in clusters? And if we do, have we got the resources and the structure on the backside with, you know, in the medical side, the legal, the regulatory side, to sign off 10 times more volume in content? And are we ready to have, in today's digital sphere, snippets of information rather than having the balanced view where we've got the proof and the safety all together? So there's still a lot of challenges ahead, and I'm really keen to discuss with the panel here about the implications of this data.
Thanks, Ben. I've just got another question, and I find this extremely interesting. So, from your point of view, how many data points really should be the minimum for any physician before you're able to categorize them into one bucket or another? And what time horizon should we really be looking at before we're able to get more confident on whether our physicians are in the right category?
So I think that we can think about that in multiple ways. If we're looking at a cohort, we'd probably be wanting to have something around the 500 interactions or more over a time period of 5 or 6 months. For a specific physician, quite honestly, we need to think about the interaction or the engagement intensity. So one thing is getting the data, and then you need to think about, well, what are we going to do with that data? Because we want to act and we want to change behaviors and we want to increase prescriptions. So one thing is capturing the information so that we can actually have a story and we can create our journey and the messaging that we want. And then you need to think about the intensity of the program using all of the channels into a journey that makes sense from the physician's perspective and will get you the intensity. I mean, we're coming back really in simple term, frequency of the rep type of thing. Coverage frequency.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of doing these big data analyses, we've always got to start with a very specific question in mind that we want to answer and the actions that we want to come out of that data analysis. And indeed, AI is, in my view, and machine learning is just another tool that can help us generate more specific outcomes, potentially. But it is just a tool. It shouldn't be an answer to a question in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, fully agree. I mean, I try not to use the AI term. It's better to talk about content affinity, channel affinity, etc. And the data is just there to be, smart calculations on the back end to be able to demonstrate that we're playing it correctly to give us the prediction or the probability that we're right.
Agree.
Okay, I think that's the last slide. Let's just go on to the next one, make sure I haven't forgotten one. Okay, that's it. That's from closing off the question, the slides that we wanted to prepare to trigger off the discussion. So now opening up the panel, Paul, if you can, and I'll hand it back to Paul.
But before I do, there are a couple of more audience questions. So I'm pleased to say that the audience has indeed discovered the questions box on the right-hand side. So quite a few of you have been using that just in the last few minutes. Please do make sure, as Sven said, that you ask your questions, make this a discussion, and ensure that whatever is troubling you right now gets addressed. So quite a few people have asked if slides are available. Yes, we are recording this whole session. We'll send it out to you afterwards. You don't need to email me for it. But as Sven said, also very happy to receive incoming inquiries. If you have specific things, you've got his contact details on the screen, so do please get in touch with him directly on that. I'm just going to throw out a few questions at once. Sven, you may choose to field these. So can data per market be received? Is there any trend information behind this, or is this a first-time survey? So do we have any historical data, and can we even project? Question for Philippe and Oliver, which is interaction between rep and HCPs is very critical to the success of commercialization. And the question is how you're using analytics, AI, ML to optimize the targeting of HCPs so that your reps get maximum maximum of their interaction. Eric asks whether or not Aptus can provide preferences at the HCP level back to your pharma clients. Simon Grime asks, how frequently would you be emailing the target physicians each month? And there was another question I wanted to read, which I'm just looking. Oh yes, what level of personalization was involved? Was it simply, the greeting, or was it fully personalized content throughout? And how tailored was it? So I realize I've just thrown you several there, but maybe Sven, you could answer a couple of them at least.
Sure. I'll start with the first question, which was, how long has this been going? We've been running surveys since 2017, capturing information on physicians' needs and all around the customer experience, obviously, but also what their needs, and what the gaps are. So definitely, we have that information. In the past, that was with DT Associates. So I'd like to just mention them, that we've been running them in the past with them. And now we're running them by ourselves. So definitely that information exists. Please do reach out to me. We don't make it publicly available for all of the markets, for all of the cuts, etc. But please do reach out to me. For the actual data, yes, we have that per market, and we have it per specialty as well. We just need to be a bit careful about pulling out trends. I think at a macro level, definitely we can pull out the trends. If we get into, for example, dermatologists in Portugal, the data points might be, not significant. So we need to take it back up a level. So it really depends. We can look at those cuts with you to see what information, what the questions are you're asking, and how we can provide that. Just to cover off a couple of other questions that were in there. The emailing per month. Well, Univardis sends out emails on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday we send out a summary, then we do ad hocs. To give you an idea, in France we send out 90 million emails a year, and then in between those we flavor it with promotional emails from our clients as well. So that's from the Univardis perspective. From the client pharma perspective, depending what the objective is and the engagement intensity you're looking for, you might be wanting to do an email every 2 to 3 weeks for quite an intensive program. That does mean a lot of content you need to sign off. But if you want to move the needle and have an impact, you need to have the volume as well. If you're trying to change behaviors, you probably need some deeper level of engagement. So you might be wanting interactive webinars, educational modules, etc. So those are the type of things that we design and plan with our clients, depending on what the problem statement is. And then the last question, I think, that was in my direction before I hand over to Philippe, was HCP level data. So we took advantage last year of GDPR to ask doctors to opt in for ticking a few more boxes. So if we're running promotional campaigns for our clients and the physician has ticked that box, we can provide that physician level information back to our clients. So that varies from country to country. As you can imagine, the Germans don't like to hand out as much as the Spanish, but yes, that's something that we can do. But actually what I would suggest doing when we're trying to determine the personas, etc., we can be very smart integrating with sales reps. So we can build different steps and different questions from different channels to really capture the information. So hopefully I've answered the questions that were directed at me, and I'll pass over to Philippe.
Thank you, Sven.
Philippe.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sven. So I would look at this historically first, what would be the basics, what you would do in terms of information you give reps. And I think several of you probably have been in a closed loop marketing journey, or CLM as it's known, and also know that experience-wise, you got to be careful how much you ask your reps to do and how much information you ask them to process. You want them to focus on the customer. And so from a closed loop marketing perspective, the information we gave them was always a sort of a history of what they did the last time they met with the physician. What kind of information did they provide so that the next time around they're not really repeating. So if they're managing several a portfolio of customers and it's numerous of them, it's not always easy to keep track of what you've actually done the last time around. So I would say that's the minimum that you would do and you continue to do today. And then you would reinforce that and say, well, what kind of information can you ask them to give back that would be fairly simple in nature, thinking of closed loop marketing, and ask them to actually start to provide a little rating on the content that they've shown to physicians in terms of did they like, not like, and so on. And be able to use that to tailor the kind of information you're going to give back to the physician. So that's the low end of what you might do in terms of usage of data. And then you can start ramping it up depending on your CRM system and be able to provide that famous 360-degree view, which we all aspire to. And then in some cases, 270 may be good enough, but at least give them some information in terms of what the company's actually been doing with the HCP that they're actually engaging with at that moment. And then finally, on the higher end, some of the things we've been doing, and this is available, so no secrets there, is using machine learning. So there's a company called Actana, which sits on top of Viva, which actually helps you to do what we call smart suggestions internally. So in that case, actually provide a suggestion to a rep as to, based on the history of interactions you have with your customers, as to what you would do next, and that would be what kind of channel you use, what kind of content you would actually provide to the physician, and that of course is based on being able to build up a certain amount of history of interactions with the customer at hand.
Yeah, and I just echo Philippe. I mean, we're on a trajectory where we're bringing Actana into the Novartis business as well. We've got great excitement from the field team of this next best action process that's a recommendation engine that will help them enhance their physician engagement to the next level through looking back at the historical data and then seeing what the physician would want based on looking at all the physician universes and how the other physicians of their category or subcategory or hypersegmentation have wanted and how they've reacted to it. So we're moving more in towards predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics here, and it's quite an exciting place. And our field team are very excited to have this capability come to them because it's a bit of a revolution for them.
Great, thank you to all of you. That was a good discussion, and thank you for those slides, Sven. We're going to, for the rest of this session, do some audience poll questions and more discussion, and that's really driven to try and understand where we are now, where we've got to go, and then obviously we'll hopefully get into the practicalities of what indeed we should do to actually make the situation better. So I'd like all of you listening in to have a quick look at your screen where you should see something pop up. Are your marketing departments, that doesn't quite make sense, I apologize. Are your marketing departments fully committed to using data insights to advance HCP engagements over their reliance on using their experience? So are we data-driven rather than experience-driven is effectively the question. So you've got 5 options here, varying from at the top. Yes, universally, driving all key decisions through data primarily. Yes, we've got access to the data insights, but they're not always used as intended. Yes, but it's in pockets, so variability. It depends on the therapy area, it depends on the individuals involved as to how enthusiastically they embrace data-driven insights. No, but we intend to roll out imminently, so you indeed plan to do so. And then finally, no, your organization doesn't currently have those plans. So I can see about 40% of you have voted so far. I'm going to hold this open for 3 more seconds. Get your votes in, please. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's have a look at the results. Okay, so we've got a bit of a normal distribution. I think the variability is the winner, nearly half of all votes, but certainly a quarter. And a minority at 10% say that they are now at the stage where they're using it universally. 5% of people don't have plans, so learning quite a lot on today's webinar, I should imagine. Any comment from that? I'd be interested to know where each of the panelists would perhaps put themselves on this list, because I know that each of you are actually at the forefront of trying to drive it within your organizations, certainly from a technical point of view, but also, I presume, from an organizational point of view. So, you know, where are we and where have we got to get to? Who wants to comment?
It's Christian. Christian, can I go first?
Go.
Okay. I would say it depends a little bit on what type of data, because I would say all of our marketeers are very much relying on primary market research type of data and base their campaigns and engagement a lot on that. I would say when it comes to the data that is continuously being captured in Viva, I would say not so much so yet. It is something that is changing. In the panel before this call, we discussed, for instance, the Viva harmonization that seems to be taking place across many markets. And it is something that will help marketeers to generate data continuously in markets, but also across markets, to see how campaigns are being received by the physicians. And on that basis, then continuously improve marketing material, opening up new channels so that we can engage better. So I think that would be my response to that.
Who's next?
I'll jump in too, if I may.
Don't wait for me.
Yes. Hi, this is Philippe again. So I think this question is kind of multidimensional in the sense that it does depend too on market maturity. So if you're looking at this globally, you even though as a company we would have a strategy to embrace agile and everything that goes with it, including being data driven, that's obviously not going to happen at the same time across the board for each one of our countries. And so I have some countries are definitely in that, yes, universally driving key decisions, and that are there in terms of the fact that they have implemented the agile processes that go along with being data driven and are actually using them to execute campaigns. And again, of course, that's not across the board. And then you have others that definitely are getting to that path and are building up to get there. But there are several things that need to happen at the same time to get there. Again, getting to that digital maturity perspective, if I would simplify and say we look at it from a people, process, technology perspective, those three elements need to evolve lockstep to be able to get to a point where you could actually do that.
Thank you, Philippe.
Yeah, and just a comment from my side, I feel that marketeers historically have been hamstrung when it's come to data. To really echo what Christian said, the data collection methods that we had of the past were slow, monotonous, generally very expensive, and it didn't allow our marketeers to dive into the data beyond maybe a standard qual study and a bit of quant. DFUs, ATUs, these are all very historic processes that haven't changed maybe in 30 or 40 years. Now we're moving quite rapidly towards a new frontier for them, where we've got dashboards that are easy to interpret, we've got data sources coming in by the minute, everything can be updated quickly. And their training capabilities, training needs haven't always been necessarily met because there's not been the desire historically to train them to become more data savvy. And it's going to be a journey for all marketeers to become really data savvy and being confident in making decisions based on the data that is shown to them on these dashboards or through these ad hoc reports, through partnering with agencies like Aptus. But we've got to get them on the journey, and the sooner that they're on the journey and they embrace the fact that rapid data is going to become the normal, the quicker they can be more confident, the quicker they can start enacting change, and we can have a high throughput marketing system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much, Oliver. I'm going to move swiftly on and ask another question then, based on, which I think is an evolution of the last one. What do you think are the biggest barriers? I think Oliver, you just mentioned a couple, in aligning your data and analysts or analytics, if you like, with sales and marketing teams. So is it a lack of motivation from one or more of these parties? Is it an organizational issue, structuring communication processes? Is it a lack of leadership defining new culture and mindset? Technical issues with data and access to data and maybe de-siloing of data? Or finally, is it the lack of understanding on how to use that data effectively, or skills and capabilities? That's that question points at. And yes, I realize, as we've just heard, there is a variability in terms of where you are in the world as to indeed how you answer this question. But keen to know anyway, if you can generalize a little, what the answer would be for you in your company. So I've got this time only about a third of you voted, so need to snap into action. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. Got the majority of you in there. Thank you very much for voting. Let's have a look at the results. Okay, so it's not a lack of motivation, but reasonably even answers from across the rest of the board. Organization, leadership, defining new culture, technical issues, which actually is much higher than I expected. I thought that would be one of the lesser ones, and lack of understanding actually winning, if I can call it that, this poll. So yeah, very keen to hear if there's any comments on this from the panel. And also I'm getting quite a few more general audience questions in, so I'm going to come to those in a minute. So if you haven't asked a question yet, now's the time to do so, because I'm about to read out some of those. So anything from the panel?
If I may, I mean, Sven, Christian and I were talking about this before we kicked off the presentation, and Philippe had indicated that MSD are already on a journey with their marketing team, so he's probably in a really good position to discuss how are they pushing forward to understand and use data effectively, probably more so than I may be at this time. So I'd really like to hear from Philippe.
well delegated.
I think, I mean, nothing ever being perfect. Definitely what you were saying, Paul, technical issues with data and access to data is still something that preoccupies us. So on one side, it's good to be on the journey. And if I go back to the statement I was making earlier about tech, people, and process needing to evolve at the same time, this is one area where I think we're trying to integrate the masses of data that we get. I mean, digital opens up a wealth of new data through the different channels that you use to interact with your customers. And so you need to organize that to some extent and make it accessible. So that's one thing that, I would say we're not completely over it. I think we have a pretty good grasp on what we need to do, and enough data, like I was saying, 270 degree view may be good enough. So I think we're definitely there. And then, but the biggest one is not really the technical challenge, because I think that's something that can definitely be overcome nowadays. There's many pockets of excellence that will help us get over that. The one definitely that I would sympathize with is the lack of understanding on how to use data effectively. So, we're definitely working with our marketers, but we've had to go through quite a bit of education to get them to understand not only how to use data, but actually how to thrive in a digital world where, yes, customers' expectations are changing. And I would refer to one of the slides that Sven showed us, where you're showing us what do customers really want. And it was overwhelming in terms of unbranded or medical data, more medical and scientific information. And so that means, we need to really think through to our content strategy as far as that goes, and say, how do we make sure we can engage with them in the early part of their journey in an area which is really not about promotion? So that was probably the biggest things that we've had to tackle, is really that education of the marketing teams.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to build on Philippe's comments on the understanding.
Go for it.
I think we're often actually in this situation where we're talking about the insights. We're producing near real-time insights and clusters and personas, etc. And we have marketing teams that are really excited when we pitch, when we deliver, and then the question comes out: well, so what? What do we do with this? How is it going to be operationally implemented in a pragmatic way? Because I think the machinery is so well oiled in the sales rep channel and the way that we've been doing business for so long, that this actually poses fundamental questions on how we actually manage the flow of content to the physicians. So, and personalized content to the physicians according to clusters, behaviors, etc. So we are constantly actually coming to the end of studies and saying, well, we've now got these clusters. What do you want to do with it? Because we can help you. But that triggers off a simple question is, but we already have the brand plan and the personas that have been done by Global, and I need to respect that. And if I look at your personas, they don't overlap. So it's a long-term process to really rethink about how we do marketing. So we're finding quick wins. We're trying to see how we can use that data to demonstrate value and the logic, but it's going to take, I think, quite a long time until we actually embed this into the full brand planning, business unit strategic planning process as well.
Okay. It's Christian. Could I offer a perspective on this as well? I think from an organization standpoint and also communication standpoint, if I should point to myself and my own function, I think sometimes us who work in, let's say, digital teams, commercial excellence team, and we've seen a little bit as the techie guys who speaks a language that the salespeople and the marketeers don't really understand, and we talk about data architecture and system integration and what have you, and it's a little boring. So sometimes we forget about another role that we should be playing in the commercial excellence of digital teams, that is to be the bridge between sales and marketing and make it easy for them to interact, to think about an integrated approach to engage with physicians. That's at least my experience from Leo Pharma, that we play a tremendously important role in combining sales and marketing efforts. And that's something we're definitely working on at Leo Pharma to make that happen, because I see that as our responsibility to create that bridge.
Fully agree, Christian.
Yeah, I do too. And I think just to comment from the Novartis side, we're just going through the budget planning process. And I believe this is going to be the first year where we've got dedicated time to look at how we can better implement digital strategies across each of the franchises so that we do have a real true digital strategy, franchise by franchise, to how to optimize our customer engagement and take it to the next level. And I think that's really needed. I think it adds power, and it also adds a measure, which means that when we get into the execution phase in 2020, people will be measured against these things. And that's the true way in which we'll see organizational improvement, when people have to be measured against what they've said will and will not happen.
Okay, I'm going to just quickly flit over to some audience questions in that natural pause just there. I'm going to read out a few of these, so panel, please do listen out and then choose which one of these you can indeed answer yourselves. A question which is actually directed at Oliver. How do you see text analytics helping HCPs and the industry as a whole? If quiz format outcomes are less impactful, what about the use of market survey questionnaires? I think that was in response to something that was said earlier. How do you see the role of the sales rep evolving in the coming years? That's a big question. Let's save that one because I've actually got another question on that at my end. But how should sales reps change their selling skills to become more customer oriented? Hello, Carol. Carol says, I'm listening as a patient and finding this really interesting, but it's not clear to me how this personalization is actually benefiting patients in the long run. Is it actually helping ultimately to increase relations engagement overall between pharma HCPs patients? Thank you for your talk. What do you think about optimal time in minutes during which medical reps need to build deep relations with customers with individualized digital support? Do you have any insight on the optimal frequency of HCP contact? How much do we need to do to have an impact, but what level is too much? Would be irritating to the recipient, it says here. Okay, I've got probably about 10 to 15 more questions, but I think that's probably enough for you to comprehend in one go. So anything on any of those?
Yeah, if I can start, I'd actually like to start with Carol's question, who I believe was a patient.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at marketing mix and engaging with physicians in different channels, this is not purely promotional mix. We should be looking at giving an 80-20 mix in favor of non-promotional content versus promotional content. And the idea of that is that we want physicians to be equipped with the right medical knowledge to be able to better prescribe the correct product at the correct time for the right patient. Having all this information at their fingertips, or having it remembered or memorized because they've engaged with it in a forum or platform that they prefer, should mean that when they come to the final prescribing decision, more likely than not, they will make the right prescribing decision. And that's the true desire of what most pharmaceutical companies want to happen. Anybody else want to comment?
On that one specifically?
Yeah, or I can go to... Okay.
No, I think that is actually a really important point that was brought up by Carol, because I fully agree with Oliver that at the end of the day, the whole purpose of the engagement with HCPs is to exactly ensure that they prescribe the newest, the best treatments to the right patients at the right time, and they say the better we become at engaging with the physicians, not only talking about our brands, but also disease understanding and diagnosis, the better the doctor will become. Because we also know a lot of doctors, they don't get a lot of training these days. So a lot of new information is actually coming from pharma companies. So I think I see this as really something that has the ultimate goal to improve patient care, that's for sure.
Okay, any of the other questions? Oliver, I think you may have, wanted to carry on.
Yeah, the one that was specifically called out to me, just to make sure I heard you correctly, Paul, it was about text analytics.
Text analytics, yes, I know. Wasn't about sexting, if that's what you were worried about.
No, I wouldn't possibly. So in terms of free text analytics, it is an important point, and in the UK, it's one that we're dealing with at the moment, actually. So we're launching a new program where we'll have our CRM system. The reps will be able to put free text in based on how they believe an engagement has gone with the physician, and also any additional notes they want to remember for the future. There's some key issues with free text analytics. Under the ABPI code in the UK, any free text has to be scanned to make sure it doesn't contain any adverse event reports that might not be captured. And it also doesn't have any negative or adverse connotations towards the physician's personal status, shall we say. But it does offer a real opportunity for powerful analytics, because we can harness the hundreds of different interactions that are going on today, if not thousands of interactions that are going on today with our entire field force, and look for the common emerging themes which have been stated by our reps, obviously if it's in a very professional and compliant manner. These would be themes relating to how our products have been received, how they've been used, what the usage in patients is like, and the clinical effectiveness that may be stated by physicians. And by collecting and harnessing all of this data together, scraping it from the free text and looking for the keywords, we're then able to pull a really good picture as to what the true view of the physician community is about our products, and also then take it one step further, which is what are the view of the different segments about our products, and have we actually segmented them as we believe, or have the classic segmentation tools of a typing tool and our reps inputting things into a system actually deviated away from what would be a segmentation that can allow us to be maximally effective, because is it giving the physician what they want, or is it giving the physician what the rep thinks they want? So it does hold a lot of power to have free text analytics, and as I said, it's something that we're implementing in Novartis at the moment.
So Paul, I think there was a question around quiz and surveys as well.
Yes, that's right.
So, I mean, typically...
Do you want me to read it again? Are you okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I've got to find it now. Excuse me one second. Ah, yes. If quiz formats outcomes are less impactful, what about the use of market survey questionnaires?
So if quiz formats are less successful?
Yeah, quiz format outcomes are less impactful. What about the use of market survey questionnaires?
So I'd need more clarity on what that means.
Okay, maybe if Mary Kay can elaborate, then we can come to that.
So while we're waiting for that, maybe I can just expand on what we consider a best practice when we're running a campaign. Typically, when you run a campaign, there is some clients, they like to do impact studies, and then there'll be evaluations using other third parties that collect the prescription data, etc. Depending what the objectives of the campaign are. They could be for knowledge transfer, as we're talking earlier was mentioned, the number one thing is education, CMEs, etc. So you would want to actually then measure the campaign to see if the physician has learned and adopted best practices or new practices having followed that content. So I think there's no perfect solution. Ideally, you start by having surveys at the start of the campaign, asking questions during the campaign. That could be done through surveys, but probably you want it to be more done through quizzes or something additional data rather than a formal survey, and then running surveys at the end of the campaign. Now, these are not the market research that Oliver was referring to, that are 30 years old in their methodology. We don't do lots of qualifying questions to make sure it's statistically significant, but they actually, so far, we run them on most programs. They are very, very close to the actual market research when the pharma client has actually run that as well. They give you a very good directional indication of the performance of your campaign. So I would strongly recommend integrating that, capturing that data and learning through the campaign, and then getting directional indication of how the campaign has performed using that information. So that's how I would answer before I hear the next part of the question.
Okay. We're actually running out of time, I'm afraid. Believe it or not, our hour has already elapsed. Time flies when you're having fun, everybody. What I am going to do, just while everybody's counting out, I'm just throwing another question up on the screen, which maybe those of you who are not having to dash instantly to your next meeting can answer whilst I talk. And obviously, I'd like to principally say thank you to Philippe, Oliver, Christian, and Sven, who've given up their time today to share those insights. Really appreciated. Once again, thank you particularly to Sven and to Aptus for their support as we put today's session together. I would love to hear any thoughts that you might have on what else we've been unable to cover during today's session, what else we need to focus on. So do write into the questions box with some suggestions there, and I'll hold it open a couple of minutes after the end of this session. And I can also see that quite a lot of you have voted in this little poll while we're talking here, so I'm just going to close that and throw the results up on the screen, just so you've got that. So I did say we would look at into sales reps here. You can obviously tick any of these for the first time. So there you go, 43, 59, 33. I don't know if that eludes any new information for you, but take that with what you can. And just a quick message from me in terms of where we're going to go next. And that is 2020 is just around the corner, and we want to have 2020 vision, I guess, for 2020. So you'll be able to continue this conversation. We're going to have some of the people like the ones you see. I'm afraid that Matt Porch's photo is the wrong one. Oh, I think they've switched around with Matt and Frank there, so apologies for that. But these are some of the people that you'll be able to meet at our upcoming events in Barcelona, Philadelphia. The links are at the top of the screen there. And of course, I hope that you'll be able to meet our panelists today at those events as well. I'll make sure that they're there in Barcelona or Philadelphia for you next year. Huge thanks once again to those who contributed, and to all of you for answering your questions. Thank you to all the thank you messages that are coming in right now. Really appreciated. And as I say, I'm going to hold this open for another minute because I'd love any further suggestions on what to do next. Much appreciated, guys, and we will speak again to you very soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.